Hello, and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to introduce Textnav to you. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover in this video. What is Textnav? Why would you want Textnav? How Textnav works, where you could get Textnav, we'll do a demonstration, and we'll once again review what we did. How to use Textnav. Okay, so, first things first, what is Textnav? Textnav is an open source text-based programming system that we developed to address the shortcomings of NXTG. Textnav programs have many advantages over NXTG programs. Textnav programs are faster to write, they're also easier to maintain, less mechanically dependent so you could change your robot, easier to share, download much more quickly, and finally, and most importantly, they are approved by Scott Evans and therefore are a legal programming system / solution for FLL. In order to understand how Textnav is better than NXTG and why you should use Textnav, we are going to do a simple mission. I'm going to describe the mission to you, and then we are going to compare the Textnav code to do the mission with the NXTG code with the mission, and we'll look at them, and you'll probably end up agreeing with me that the Textnav code is better. Okay, first things first, what is the mission? The mission is that you have a robot. It's that Roomba, bluish, grayish, kind of weird circle thingy. It kind of looks like a Roomba. It starts off 90 degrees away from where it needs to be. Then it needs to go forward a set distance, turn 90 degrees, and then go forward until it hits a black line. So that's the mission. This is going to show you why Textnav programs are easier to write. On the top, we have the tried and true, slow NXTG code. And you can just follow that along by looking at the bottoms of the blocks. You have your spin 90 degrees, your go forward, your another spin, a go forward unlimited, waiting for the light, and then stop. Now, ignoring these lines up at the top for a second, just looking at lines 10 through 15, you'll realize that each one of these Textnav lines in the Textnav program corresponds to one block up here in the NXTG program. And what's so good about this is it means that there's a one-to-one correspondence between these two, between Textnav and NXTG, and so that means that users of NXTG can just snap right into Textnav because it's just like NXTG, only text. You'll also, and what's nice about this code is that because it's text, it's just a lot easier to write. I mean, for each one of these blocks, you have to go out to that side menu thing, pick the block, drag it out, wait for the editor to make room for it, and then even after you've done all of that, you still need to click on the block, go down the drop-down menu, set the options you want, and then maybe move the slider if you have to, and then when you're finally done, you press OK, and that's just one block, and then you have to do that for every one of those blocks, and that's very time-consuming. With Textnav, all you have to do is type, and with a really good editor, like a powerful editor, this could be really fast. You could type a lot of this, and you know, it's just a one-to-one thing. Typing is nice. Another thing that I should point out is that on the Textnav program, anything after a pound sign is a comment, so that corresponds to the comments up here in the NXTG code. Okay, moving right along. Now let's suppose that our mission has changed for some reason. We've changed our robot. Before, maybe we had an arm on the front, and now we don't. So now our robot can start out facing the same way that it always, just facing straight. It doesn't need to turn at the beginning. The rest of the mission's the same, it just starts out facing straight. Okay, this is going to show you how Textnav code is easier to maintain. As you can see with the Textnav code, in order to sort of comment out, or not to ignore the robot.spin, what you do is you just put a pound sign. For the NXTG code, what you do is you have to drag the block out. You could also delete the block, but maybe you want to save it for later. So you just drag the block out. And you can already see that that's much faster just to put a pound sign in front of something in a text editor, especially when NXTG programs get big. You have the problem that as soon as the block moves out of the way, it takes a little while to move the block out of the way for the editor to make room and say, oh, that's what you want to do, okay. And so clearly the Textnav program is better. But more importantly, look at the comments up here in the NXTG code. You'll see that each one of these comments is not aligned with the designated block anymore. This spin degrees used to go with that block, but that block's gone now. So you'll see that now if you wanted to make your comments good for judging, you'd have to move your comments all over one. And with really big programs, that could be a pain. With Textnav, you'll notice the comments stay with each line. So you've just commented out that line, that's all there is to it. Okay, now let's suppose, we'll go back to the original mission, but suppose that our robot changed. Instead of that nice sleek Roomba thing, we now have this big, I don't know, fat robot, but except it's now outfitted with bigger wheels so you could go over a bump in the field or something. Same mission, just the robots changed. This is where we get into the fun thing called constants, which was the part of the program I told you to ignore earlier. And what constants do is they relate a real world physical quantity such as distance or degrees, and they relate it to something that the robot understands, like motor ticks. And what's nice about that is when you change the code, when you change your robot, in order to change the code, all you've got to do is adjust the constants back to work with your new driving base, and then your new driving base will work. And that's really nice. So you'll see here we have spin constant at the top, which we're setting equal to 9.71, and that represents the number of degrees the motor needs to turn in order to spin the robot 1 degree. And then we also have millimeters of dist, which represents the number of degrees the motor needs to turn to move the robot 1 millimeter. And then finally we also have reversed, which is a really nice constant. So let's suppose in order to make the robot go whatever direction you want to think is forward, you actually have to tell the NXTG editor to move the robot quote-unquote backwards. What reverse will do is if you just set that to a -1 instead of 1 up at the top of your code, everywhere when you tell it to go forward, it will tell the NXT editor to go backwards, and everywhere you want to go backwards, it will tell the NXTG code to go forwards, and it will all work out, and you can just think about it as the robot's going forward. You don't have to think, wait, I want it to go forwards, that means I tell it to go backwards. It's just so much simpler. But if you look at the NXTG code, now that you've changed your robot, there are all those things, all those different parameters you now need to tweak, all just because you've changed your drive base, and in FLL that could be a disaster. Easier to share. Okay, so this is just an easy example of how you could share Textnav code. Because Textnav is text, it's so much easier to just send somebody. You could copy and paste it into an email buffer. The other nice thing it has over NXTG is NXTG files. If you want somebody to look at your code, particularly, they have to have a copy of NXTG, unless you want to send these big ugly picture things around, but then they can't edit them. So that's a pain, but this is just so much simpler. You can just attach it as text, and also text is a much more widely supported format, and so people anywhere can read it. You could put it in Google Docs, you could, I don't know, email it, you can do whatever you want with it, and so that's why Textnav programs are easier to share, because they just use text. Text is more a developed format. Okay, now we're proud of this. This is pretty cool stuff. We wrote the demo program that you saw. We downloaded both NXTG and Textnav. The NXTG download took 35 seconds, while the Textnav download only took 4 seconds. And what's even better about this is that we project while the NXTG program just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the download time will get longer and longer and longer. But the Textnav program, even as the Textnav program gets longer, you could double or triple the size in Textnav program, and you still wouldn't notice any difference in download times.